everyone, let's begin working on this beautiful Kalamkari inspired Motif terracotta set. So if you see, I'm working on a slab of 0.6 centimeters thickness. That's just an air pocket. I try and break that off. Smoothen this using my fettling knife. Now I do not have a rectangular shaped cookie cutter of this size, so I'm just using a paper cutout. It's not exactly a paper, it's basically a card, a thicker card. So you can always try using an old greeting card or an invitation card or something like that. This is an X-Acto knife that I basically used in order to get this kind of a crisp cut. I smoothen the edges. This is for the earrings. The slab thickness is 0.3 centimeters. After smoothening, I use a rectangular shaped cookie cutter and I cut out the shape. Once again, I smoothen the edges of this as well. The Nichrome wire U-pin for the earrings are gauge 26. Using my fettling knife, just adding very basic, very simple designs. I'm starting off with margins along the four sides. And I just repeat this kind of a design on all the four sides. It's a very basic, simple, easy design, and like I said, that it is something that is very beginner friendly. Obviously, how you choose to paint it is totally up to you. The Nichrome wire that I'm using here is gauge 24. I'm repeating the similar pattern on the earrings as well. So if you see, I've pretty much used only my fettling knife in order to make the designs on this particular set. So I will leave the link to the bead making video in the description box, so you can just take a look at that. I'm going to be using that for assembling this particular set. I let this dry, and once this set is dried, it's fired in an electric kiln. And after this is fired, we can begin painting upon it. So if you see, I've already laid out the paints, the fired pieces, everything on the table. Everything is ready for me to start working on it. So the colors are basically black, antique gold, and a milky white. It's a bit like an off-white. These are the brushes that I'm going to be using. Like I said, it's a motif that I'm planning to make. Mostly, you'll see probably something like this on Kalamkari saris and dress materials and things like that. So this is the design that I finally decided, something that is easy for me to draw as well. So I'm actually doing this with a regular graphite pencil, just your normal pencil. Once again, if you're only starting off and if this is something that you are not comfortable doing, please choose a simpler design to maybe draw or paint on. I realized that this was actually where I made a small mistake, because when I paint upon this, the entire design is actually going to get covered. So what I should have typically done is basically do the design, rather do all of the painting and then draw the design on top of it. But you'll see me correct it, and you'll see how I go about the entire piece. It's just a simple paisley design, something very commonly seen. I'm sure, if you probably pick up one of your Kalamkari dresses or something, especially if it's a floral theme or a paisley theme one, you'll probably see this more easily. Now along the margins, I'm going to be applying diluted black paint. A little bit of antique gold, mixing this with a little bit of black to give it a more duller finish. Just dabbing along the borders. So So doing this slowly reveals the design. Now I haven't painted the center because I intend to paint it in the milky white or the off-white color. This is for the beads. Once again, if you are allergic to using paints in this manner in your hands, just please go ahead and use a brush. It'll definitely be a lot more time consuming to do it with a brush. I mean, this is in fact probably the most easiest methods of painting an entire bead in one go. So if you see, I mean, 80% of it is already done. I'll just repeat once again and the coat becomes pretty nice. So if you see, the bead looks pretty nice over there. I'm painting the center in this milky white or off-white color combination. And you'll see that the design completely goes away, rather gets covered by the paint because I'm applying a pretty thick coat. It actually slipped my mind that it's not, it's not a mural work that I'm doing, so it's not something that I'm not going to be applying very heavily diluted paint. So that's where I think I made the mistake. But what I end up doing is basically once this off-white paint dries, I just go again with the pencil and repeat the design. At this stage, if you do see any kind of air bubbles like you see in mine, it's best to just break it using a small safety pin. Just beautifying the beads a little bit more. Just making it a little bit more appropriate for the pendant. By the way, the sides and the back of the pendant is all black. So if you see now that the paint is dried, and I'll have to obviously go ahead and repeat the design. So if you see, I've already drawn the design now. I go on with my liner brush and I try to be as neat as possible. Rather as fine as possible, because the idea is definitely not for the lines to be too thick. Once again, like I repeated, if you are only starting off and you do not want to do something this intricate or this full, you can always opt for a design which you are more comfortable painting, because this being the most focal part, the most important part, I mean, this is probably the first thing that people would end up seeing. It's best that you try and do a very neat job. I think that's kind of something that I aim for. So if you are a beginner, please try and choose something a little more simpler, something that you're comfortable doing. You could also try and practice something like this on a piece of paper, just so that you're able to get the paint lines as neat as possible. Like I said, it's just a combination of paisleys and floral designs. Personally, I think the color combination is just so apt. It's beautiful. It's not too loud at all. In fact, it's so subdued that I feel like I should probably do a lot more pieces like this. because it has because the earring basically has very little room. I won't be able to do anything very elaborate, so I'm sticking to a very simple design here, but keeping the theme and not deviating from that. Just drawing something that goes well with the pendant as well. That's it. So once the paint has completely dried, I'm just rubbing off the pencil marks. Very important step because it looks very odd, if those things are seen. Now that you see everything is dried well, this is the product I use. It's time to varnish. I give it a good shake and transfer a little bit of the contents into a bowl or a container. And using a broad bristle soft brush, I apply a generous coat all over. Just making sure none of those eraser marks and things like that are there. Just making sure the varnish gets into all of the grooves and everything. Now once the varnish is dried, it's time to assemble. I start off with the earrings. These are just basic earring hooks. And with regard to the pendant, if you see, I already have a pre-made cord. I have videos of how I've made something like this, something similar. I'm also going to be using gear wire. These are just 4 terracotta black beads. I have painted them, varnished them and kept them ready. These are jump rings, heavy gauge jump rings. Crimp covers. Crimp beads. Obviously my set of pliers. So this is the manner in which I intend to assemble. The first thing is the crimp bead. I put the crimp bead through the gear wire and then put it through the pendant. And press it down. Press down the crimp bead really firmly, making sure the gear wire is in place. I cover the crimp bead with a crimp cover. Towards the end of it, I am using a jump ring, and I repeat the same process. I think by now you've seen me do this a bunch of times, so it's probably something which which you're probably used to. Give it a good pull, making sure it's all firm. Cut off the excess wire. I open up the jump rings and I put the cord in. And that's pretty much it. I make sure it's closed well. And the set is ready. So if you see, it's a beautiful, beautiful set. I am so happy with the way the pendant actually looks. I love the earrings as well. They're super light. And I'm glad that the painting on this particular pendant turned out the way I expected it. In fact, better than expected. Thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for watching.